you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined this week by Neil.
Hello.
And by Dom.
Hello there.
Moments of the week. Neil, do you want to start us off?
Last minute winner. It has to be, doesn't it? These don't come along very often. So yeah, that was a magic moment. Made all the more better by Man in Yellow falling downstairs, which was just seriously. I don't laugh at people falling over very often. It's not my kind of humour. But that got me. I think I was just delirious from the goal, and then seeing that afterwards, it sent me into a bit of a frenzy. No, but that whole winning in the last minute is very good. Thank you, Coventry.
What made Man in Yellow so good was that you saw him get up and be okay.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it was quite a hefty fall. There was a risk there, but no, he fixed himself and he was well involved. I'm sure he was hurting afterwards, but he embraced the moment.
But he wasn't, he didn't break anything, or he didn't, I mean, I think it was okay to laugh at him because he did just get straight up, and I'm sure the adrenaline in the situation kicked in and it sort of helped him through those initial seconds, and that he probably limped back to his seat. But there is a level to which, I mean, I've seen it plenty of times. The amount of injuries that people have incurred because they've lobbed themselves downstairs and everything, or into concourses. It's par for the course, isn't it? But I'm sure
football is dangerous. That's my take on this situation.
It absolutely is. And now he's internet famous for 5 minutes, so I'm sure he'll be delighted either way.
I wonder if he listens to this show. If you are Man in Yellow and listen to the show, let us know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. We have tweeted about him a few. I mean, well, one, I don't
Seems unlikely, but
yeah. Or indeed, if you know Man in Yellow, please put him in touch. Dom, moment of the week.
Well, just following on from scoring the last minute winner, public hugging. It's not something I particularly do. I think the first time someone tried to hug me at a COF game was during the Wickham Checkatrade game, and I jumped out of the way. Like, even during the delirium of probably having made it to Wembley, I was still not hugging a stranger. And I think when we won the Checkatrade Trophy, I sort of sagely, after the final whistle, looked at my dad for a second, hugged him for a second, and then we looked away from each other. So, yeah, that was some development for me to actually be hugging people in public.
Oh, I apologise because, full disclosure, me and Dom were stood next to each other, and that you had very little choice other than to be aggressively hugged by me and Martin and John.
It comes out.
Yeah, it was very much a non-choice scenario. So I apologise if that was if that's now a Me Too moment, but that So I guess it was hard not to be overwhelmed by the situation, was it? For me, there's two things that, I mean, that period from the first goal up until getting back to London Bridge and onwards for the rest of the night, there's a handful of things. For me, and it sort of moves on to the game itself in a little bit of a way. One, it's the fact that it's Bakayoko that gets the 2 goals. I don't think there was a player better in the squad to have got the goals because and I've seen subsequently people talk about the impact that he made when he came on in a more general sense. And I think the 2 substitutions, him and Huula coming on, changed things dynamically. But I do think it would be over the top to suggest that Bakayoko had some sort of grand hand in overall everything, not just those finishes. He's just so cumbersome and such not a villain, but like a sort of a figure of fun so far, that for him to come on and score those 2 admittedly tap-ins was just glorious. Because you don't want to see people get vilified either, do you? You don't want to see scapegoats and boo boys. So it's fabulous that he came in and scored the 2 goals.
He's quite sweet, isn't he? Being offside all the time. It's just something endearing about the fact that he seems a bit of a football wally. I'm not sure what it is.
I think he's smiling all the time, isn't he?
Yeah.
So in every photo that you see of him, he's always got a big wide grin. He just seems like a really endearing fella. So I was really, really pleased for him. And then the song, there's just some things where the first iteration of it that I heard was, of course, it was 20 goals, Bakayoko. For anybody that's not heard it, you will be hearing it in the coming months. But it's 20 goals, Bakayoko. 20 goals, 20 goals, I pray, so on and so forth. And the first iteration I heard of it was playing football the Robbins way at the end. And straight away you were like, that's pretty good. But then by the time that everyone was singing it non-stop for 20 minutes after the game, well, probably longer than that, waiting for the train and then on the train, for it to have progressed to playing football the offside way was just, it's just glorious. And must have made no sense to any of the Charlton fans that were listening to it. Yeah, and then just the other thing that made it glorious was on the way out of the ground, we got ambushed by a load of Charlton fans. Ambushed is probably too strong a word because there wasn't that many of them, but clearly the Charlton fans knew how to go around the corner to find people to have a fight. And they were just immediately intercepted by really unforgiving police. And it just seemed like we had like our own specific police escort that was there to explicitly just stop Charlton fans. So we felt very, like, do you know what I mean? It was just like a sort of, you were like, oh, is there going to be any aggro? Nope, because they were going to be mercilessly swept away. It didn't feel like they were trying to interfere with Cov fans at all. They weren't heavy-handed with us walking round. They were just there to sort of sweep up the ne'er-do-wells of Charlton that had come to swarm upon us. It was just, it's hard to overstate how glorious a comeback it was. Dom, why was it so brilliant?
Because it was completely unlikely for about 80 minutes, where Charlton were really bloody good, I thought. I thought they were very good on the ball. And it wasn't just that they were sort of passing it about, sort of just dicking around with the ball. They were switching the play really well. There was movement off the ball. Perhaps weren't creating the chances for the sort of control of the game, but they just looked a very good side and were controlling the game.
Lyle Taylor, as a player.
Yeah, I was impressed with him. But as you say, I think it was their control in midfield was really, really noticeable, wasn't it? Was there anything that you thought... Well, I alluded to the substitutions before. How much of an impact do you think they actually made?
Well, I think the main impact really was to get more players ahead of the ball. When the team was announced, it was Bayliss on the right, which you're like, well, it worked in League Two last year, but it is a bit of a negative change. But maybe it'll work here on an away day. And then it was pretty obvious from early on that it wasn't working. There just weren't enough players getting ahead of the ball. Doyle and Kelly were sitting too deep. We weren't really sort of putting pressure on Charlton with the ball. And whenever we got it, it was sort of it was very hard to construct attacks. So the main benefit of the change really was to bring Bayliss into the centre, which meant that we had one central midfielder at least getting forward, plus two wide players and two strikers, and it eventually meant we had numbers forward to attack when we had the opportunity to in those final 10 minutes.
Me and Paul had an argument in the week about after last week's podcast, I texted him and Neil and said I'd wanted to make a point about the starts of the season that Wolves and Watford had, and it being like, Watford have dropped off ever so slightly, I suppose, but the Wolves especially, I think they've gone the longest that any team in the Premier League have gone for at the start of a season without naming a changed 11.
Yeah.
And I heard Matt Doherty talking after the game on Saturday, I assume, about the sort of benefit of everybody just knowing their jobs and knowing their colleagues and everything. And Paul was saying that we had a settled first 11, and I just thought that again on Saturday it just demonstrated that we don't. I don't know, Neil, whether you've got any thoughts on Bayliss's move out to the right and why that keeps happening.
I think it's there's a Robins preference there, isn't there? And he likes Doyle and he likes Kelly both as probably men and as footballers. And there's this kind of determination to get those two back into the team. And because Bayliss is who he is, he's perfectly capable of playing on the right. And I just feel like it's almost a fallback option. I totally agree. I think there is so much value in having a team that this is really the only way you win matches, where you have a consistent, sort of concerted team that everybody knows each other. We had it at the back end of last year. We all knew what our good best team was by the time we ended up in the playoffs, and it kind of saw us through. I don't think we've got a settled team at the moment. I think Robbins has an idea of kind of the players that he wants to play, but it's not settled by any means. I mean, we're changing people, game after game, and we still don't know which left back we want to play. Centre midfield, by rights, it really should be Doyle and Bayliss. That's kind of the combo that's worked at most, but we're switching that up as well. So, no, I don't think we're quite there yet. I'd like to get to that point, because I don't think we're not good enough to be able to tinker. We're not Chelsea. We're not a team with high quality all over the squad, and we need to develop something. And I guess until you do finally find something that works, you're always going to tinker, aren't you? So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, isn't it?
Dom, to what extent do you think that the starting lineup played into Charlton's hands?
I think it didn't help matters. I think Charlton are generally a good team, and whatever team we picked, Charlton were likely to dominate the game. It was just about giving us a chance on the counter, and playing so few players looking to get forward meant that we didn't offer a great deal for a large portion of the game.
Neil, you talked about who plays left back being a specific thing. I, at the moment, don't have a particularly strong view on who I want to play left back, so much as who I don't want to play left back. Is it still in the realms of being too early to write off Junior Brown, or not to write off Junior Brown, but are we at a point now where it's probably we've seen enough of him to be able to sufficiently criticise, I mean, not just the ludicrous penalty given away, but what I thought again was another quite poor performance?
It's getting to the point where we need him to settle down. I think it's absolutely fair for when a player joins a new club that it can take a while, regardless of who they are. It can take a while for them to kind of bed in, understand kind of the formation and how things are working around him. And obviously he didn't start the season, but he's one of those players that you feel like Robbins is quite keen to make his number one if he can help it. The problem he's got is Brown isn't playing anywhere near good enough to be number one. And then when you've got Mason, who I think came back last night, didn't he? So he should be pushing him again. It's a really tricky one, because I had no problem with Ryan Haynes. So I kind of wouldn't mind of him still being there. But when we brought in those two, and we've also got Camwell as well, on the face of it, you think, okay, well, we shouldn't be worrying about left back, because at least we have an option. And when you've got Robbins putting in a player who seems to be making quite important mistakes every single game, it's difficult. I won't write him off, because he's actually going forward. He has some good moments. I do quite like him, but at the same time I like Mason as well. So I'm open to either of them showing what they can do, but I'm also going to be very harsh on players who give away stupid penalties like that, which was just the most outrageous decision you'll ever see in your life. What was he thinking?
Dom, can you, for those who haven't seen it yet, can you remember it particularly well? Are you able to break it down?
Yeah, so it was basically a ball played to Lamptey for Charlton in sort of our left back zone, and the clash sort of started outside the area, and you could see that Junior Brown's shirt was sort of halfway up his back, and it was a bit of a tussle, but he just seemed to lose his head completely and forget it was in the penalty area and just muscled into the ground, which was ridiculous.
It was, I mean, we were in a good place for it. We were literally right in front of it, weren't we? We were probably 10 rows back or something like that. But I think he was off balance. I don't think that helped him. And two, I think you're right about Taylor sort of giving him some back. But he was just beating all ends up more than anything. And it's that mental thing for me that worries me, is that the reaction when you're off balance against a player who really, he wasn't bearing down on goal. There was a good chance that he could have squared it and presented a good chance for someone, but it wasn't an imminent goal scoring opportunity where you have a rush of blood to the head, and you know that you're on the wrong side of him, two, you're off balance, and just three, you can't get anywhere near the ball. Why would you throw yourself in? You just think, he's not 19.
No, that's the problem.
Looking at it at the time, I read. Did anyone read Laurie's blog? Not to put anybody on the spot, was it? But he said that there was somebody next to him that had said, "Oh, that's never a pen," and it was one of them moments where he just couldn't stop himself, but to just go. I mean, it wasn't it though? You want
to be a fan, don't you? You want to kind of try and put the ref under pressure, but sometimes you just got to say, yeah, that's pretty bad.
It's just you're just like, well, that's a penalty if ever I've seen one. But I think there's I think Sterling has played better at left back so far. Mason only played half a game yesterday, didn't he? Which makes you think, well, there's a good chance that means that he's going to play on Saturday. And there's also this talk of, you mentioned Chris Camwell, but there's also this talk of Sam McCullum, who I'm not even sure I was aware of prior to Robbins talking about him today, who's another top prospect coming through.
Interesting that he brings the name up anyway. I mean, you sort of think, if you're going to mention a name, he's obviously having to think about him.
Well, he was doing the Robbins Classic, which was he was simultaneously praising and sticking the boot into Chris Camwell. Is why he came up. Did you read it at all?
Oh, I've missed it. No.
Yeah.
He was saying He was saying that he had brought Camwell on as a choice between him and, I think it's McCallum or McCullum. And he'd chosen Camwell because he'd got some prior experience, but ultimately he wasn't sure whether he was going to end up making it as a left back. He might have to change his position if he's going to make it.
Say what you mean, Mark.
He's only a babby, I think. You just think you'd look at it and you'd be like, oh, the manager's talking about me. I'm in the
no. What have I done wrong?
Oh, never mind. And I think he was trying to be complimentary. I think what he was saying was his delivery's so good and he's got so many attacking qualities that ultimately it might just be that he becomes a winger. And you do kind of think, going back to what you were saying before, you do kind of think, couldn't you have done that with Ryan Haynes?
Yeah, we've been there before, haven't we?
Isn't that possible that you could have tried? Dom, lots and lots of people have, and by lots and lots I probably mean 3 or 4, have written to us to say things along the lines of, has there been a more consistent player than Willis this season? Thought that Willis was fantastic on Saturday. What did you make of Willis's performance?
Yeah, he's good. You sort of expect a certain level of performance from him these days. I don't think I've thought he's been particularly outstanding at any point in the season, but I don't think he's ever let us down. He's been very steady, and that's what you want to see for someone who's come through the academy and played 150 odd games for us. That he's part of the furniture now.
I do like him. I'm not entirely sure he's been as steady as he could have been either. I think there have been games where our defence have been pretty all over the place, and he's contributed to that. So I think he's starting to pull it together now. But as far as sort of players who have played well all season long, I'd have Burge on that list and Hyam. They're the two I think of. Probably 90% of their games they've put in good performances for the club, even when the team hasn't been playing well. They're my two that I'd stick out. Oh, and obviously Bayliss, but it feels like a given. Can you say Bayliss?
Yeah, well, but as well, Bayliss is different, isn't he? Because actually, Bayliss exists on different terms. If Willis gives the ball away constantly, it's unacceptable. But if Bayliss does it, it's because he's trying a cavalcade of risky passes to try and get something going. You can't really compare the two, can you? Bayliss is
not by that metric, no.
Bayliss can have a bad game and still have a good game in a lot of ways, can't he? His job ultimately is create a load of chances, but if he keeps trying and trying, it's still okay. Whereas if you keep conceding loads of goals, but you keep trying and trying, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, and his bad games, like you say, they never feel like bad games. I mean, for me, a Bayliss bad game usually is a Bayliss quiet game. So he's just not on the ball enough. I think when he's on the ball, he can lose his concentration a little bit sometimes. But more often than not, you see a lot of quality in there, and it's very hard for him to have a poor game while he's actually got the ball. I think his issue is more around kind of being prominent within the match throughout the course of the 90 minutes. I think there are still quite sort of long portions of the game where he's not involved, and some that might be to do with the fact that a lot of time he's been shunted out right. I don't know, but that's probably my only criticism of is, and whether it's tiredness or fitness or just a willingness to get involved at all points, I'm not sure. But that when I look at Bayliss and think he's had a bad game, that's usually because just he's not been involved rather than his quality, because I think that's just there for all to see.
Without wanting to be contrary, the centre back partnership for me at the moment is Hyam Davies. I don't know.
I get it. Yeah.
I just think I just think that I think there are better all round players than both of them, but I do feel like they give you the solidest base.
There's something in it. I think Hyam's done so well, and Davis has been unlucky just because of the way he kind of fell out of the team. I guess one with part down to suspension and things like that. The problem is I also like Willis as well. And
yeah.
I mean, if anything, I don't want Willis at right back, but part of me, because of who he is and kind of the influence he can have over the team at some points, and when Sterling wasn't quite doing it at right back, I would have been happy for him to jump in there. I think now that Grimm is still a little while away, isn't he? And Sterling's kind of settled himself down. I still don't think he's performing to the ability that I kind of want him to, but he doesn't seem a risk to us anymore. He's doing his job and he's helping the team. But yeah, can we have more defenders? Is that all right? Can we just have an extra one in there, just all three in there?
Well, yeah, possibly. Well, weirdly, it did feel like at the start of the season the players that he had amassed had been with an eye on playing three at the back.
Yeah.
Didn't he? The other thing you could say is that I think you can very easily play Willis at right back if you are looking for more of an excuse. If you're looking for a solid base, that means that Bayliss can play in the middle. I think you can get away with playing Bayliss in the middle and even possibly Thomas and Jones, or however you want to sort of articulate that midfield or whatever. Yeah. If you then have a fullback that isn't naturally going to bomb right on, so that you can provide a bit of balance in the team, and then that way you get him in, and you sort of half hope with Willis that he will grow into replacing Doyle as captain, because I can see I think he looks like leadership material. But I still think I don't think that means that he's our best defender. Albeit that I still forget that he's probably only 24, isn't he?
Yeah.
We are contractually obliged every week to talk about Connor Chaplin at great length. So is it time to talk about him? Don, what did you make of his performance?
Well, he had that chance in the first half, which when we were watching it first viewing in the stadium, it sort of like kind of snatched at it, but you weren't sure how big a chance that was. And then you watch that on the replay, and it was a very good chance. He
really
should have scored.
Chance,
yeah. But what I would say about it is how many of our other strikers would have been able to trap that ball in that position, would have been able to anticipate that. Who would someone else have been in that position to miss it? Where I think with Chaplin, if you like quite a lot of his misses, you're like, oh, you really should have scored that. But then you also have to appreciate that it took good movement, it took match intelligence to actually get in a position to miss it. And at the moment, I mean, you're hoping that he will score that first goal from open play pretty soon. But I'm still of the belief that he is someone who has the ability to score a lot of goals, and it will just take a bit of a surge in confidence for him to do so.
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? He's come in, and I think in that first game he showed a lot of confidence, but he wasn't fit, so he couldn't quite kind of implement what his brain was or his body was trying to do. And it's just it's so fragile, confidence, isn't it? That you kind of see now that these chances are coming to him, and I think impulsively he would be able to put them away, but there is just something there which has kind of got to him a little bit, and it will just take something. I think there's enough quality when you see the way he strikes the ball. It's really quite clean. I think he will get some goals for us, and it's just it can't become a thing. And we've got to remember, it's only been a few games. It's not like he's been here for 10 games and he's not scored anything. He's just had a few games, still getting back up to fitness. There are lots of caveats, and I guess Robbins' thing now is obviously you've got Bakayoko who scored 2 in the last game. You've got Hawula, who I'm going to mention last night. He looked quite threatening last night. Clark Harris has had a good run of form. You know, he does have other options, and I guess he has to be a little bit selective. I don't think he will be. I think he'll play Chaplin again. I think he'll go back to Chaplin and probably Clark Harris on Saturday. I think he's trying to build something there, but don't want to judge him just yet. I think there's a lot of caveats in there, and he's shown enough signs of being a good player, and I think he will come good. But I have no idea what Robin's going to do on Saturday.
For me, just quickly on a couple of things. One, on Chaplin, the strange thing is that all of the Portsmouth fans that talked about Chaplin when we signed him talked about him being a tiny finisher that needed a strike partner next to them. And what's clear is that he's much more than that, isn't he? And in fact, he's the inverse. He's missed an awful lot of chances, which I think sometimes happens. I'm not particularly concerned about that side of it, and I'm mainly not concerned about that side of it because I think he's added so much to the team since coming in. And I think the second goal is because he nips in and gets the ball and puts a really good cross in at the right time. I think his judgment of where he should be across the forward line is really good. I find that he runs the channels at the times where he should be out wide, and that he's in the box when chances come up, and you can't really ask for much more than that from a striker, can you? I think I'm with you. I'm reasonably confident that he will start scoring goals. That said, we talked earlier about the idea of having a settled first 11 and whatever. And I should confess, and I think I have in the past, that my preference would be to have a small squad and to have a settled team and to only really deviate from it where you had injuries and suspensions and whatever. But Robbins has got a really big squad with the idea that you have competition for places, and that when somebody comes in, you have to, force them out of the team and up your game in training and everything. And it will be disappointing for me based on that if Chaplin and Clark Harris start again, in spite of Hawula and Bakayoko having proved that they deserve a chance in the team by scoring the goals that Chaplin hasn't. Dom, is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's a tough one to balance having a settled team and sort of being on the sort of momentum that we have, but then also rewarding Bakayoko and Hawula for their exploits over the past week. I suppose it's sort of what works was did what happened on Saturday work because of something unique to the circumstances of the game. It might not apply to Wickham, or do you have to go with someone who scored 2 goals in a game?
I think it could be both, though. I mean, I think what happened the other day could very much be the circumstances suited 2 players who had a bit of a point to prove, and kind of how we dealt with it. But by the same measure, those 2 players may have enough confidence to kind of take them through to the next game. And they're footballers, so they've got some quality because they're playing professionally. They've clearly got something there. I think it can be both. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, who can tell? I mean, we'll only know after the game, and that's the ridiculous thing about football management. It's all retrospective, basically. Me and you had a little bit of conversation on Twitter, didn't we, on Saturday night, just about how much credit Robbins gets. And the age-old argument is when they makes a sub, does he get credit for the sub, or do you criticise him for the fact that the first 11 didn't work? And I'm always of the camp, well, you give him credit for the sub, because you cannot predict how the dynamic of any match is going to work from the outset. You have to adjust to it, you have to react to it. And I guess the criticism we've always had on Robbins to this point is he takes quite a while to react. Well, I kind of feel like on Saturday he definitely reacted at the right point and brought on 2 players who ultimately won us the game. And just my final point on that is the winning goal from Bakayoko's header was actually a really good goal.
Yeah,
he won a fantastic header. And then just the build-up play, just to create something, it shows football doesn't have to be that difficult. You just need a bit of a quick brain. And it was just a really well-worked goal, and actually a really good header as well.
I think I get boring talking about the Premier League on here, but I'm going to do it again. I just think it's been interesting watching the goals that Man City score over the last 2-3 years or so, where ultimately the job is to get the ball across the box as close to the goal line as possible, isn't it? And all of their goals, by and large, are tap-ins. And I just think that I don't see us get to the byline often enough for my liking. It always seems that it's across from 40 yards out or whatever. And I just thought it was interesting that I don't think we score that many outright tap-ins, and I just thought it was nice to see. I think it would be nice to see more of that. Dom, you talked about that it wasn't necessarily one thing or another that we were talking about that led to us getting back into the game. I wonder if you've got a view on why we did get back into the game.
Other than I think my main thing is that I think when a game's 1-0, and I think there is a tendency for any team to become slightly panicky when they're ahead, and it's tenuous. A 1-goal lead, something randomly can change, and it all comes about the tight margins and all sorts of other cliches. And it was just an occasion where we got a bit of the rub of the green in those last 10 minutes. I mean, even when we went 1-1, Charlton missed a really good chance.
Yeah.
Watch it back on the highlights where the player tried to head it across goal instead of, if he sort of aimed it into the goal, it would have been 2-1 and game over. So I think sometimes match circumstances play out in a way, and if you're decent enough to keep yourself in the game, and for as much as Charlton dominated, we did manage to stay relatively organised at the back. You didn't have too many opportunities to extend the lead despite their control of the game, and we were always going to have a chance. On Saturday, it went in our favour, and on Tuesday night when the game was kept relatively tight against a good team, Portsmouth completely shut that down. So it just happens.
I think that was a crucial bit of it for me. I really felt like, do you know what it reminded me of a little bit? And I know it was only a game that we drew this one. Do you remember that game against Preston where Frank Musa scored that absolute screamer at Preston to make it 1-1? And it's the game where Jeff asks him about having lost 1-0 at the end. Musa does that Tim from The Office look at the camera. Yes. They deserve that draw, not because they played well at any point during the game, but because Preston's plan was that they never went for a second goal. They were so much better than us that day, but they wanted to keep it at 1-0 and see the game out. And I think that was Charlton's biggest failing, was that I think they sat for too long trying to protect a 1-0 lead in a game that they'd got so much dominance in, that eventually you almost by sort of proxy kind of go, well, we'll have a go then and get some chances. And I think they were the only two shots that we had on target, and I think it was one of them games that you almost fall arse backwards into winning 2-1 out of nowhere. And I don't think it was a particularly, we did not deserve to win that game, which one made it so glorious, but two I think is still a bit concerning, isn't it?
It seems a bit haphazard. I think because I watched it from afar and you guys were there, that we're going to have different kind of views on it. Because I think when I'm at football matches, you're very much involved in it, and I think you're potentially more critical of the game than maybe it deserves. Because when I was watching it from afar, and certainly in the first half, I thought, while Charlton were better than us, I think they were all the way throughout, our failing was almost kind of a lack of concentration at key points, because there seemed to be lots and lots of opportunities where we could have done something. I thought Bayliss was getting lots of space in the first half, and it got to kind of key moments, and for whatever reason, things fell down. So I'm just wondering whether are we onto something with this team, and it's just going to take that extra level to kick on, or we don't know yet. I think that's my overriding point. We don't quite know where we are with them at the moment. I think I'm still trying to take some solace from the fact that I'm seeing, if we do everything right or we do the right things or make good decisions, we could be winning most of these games. And Charlton's probably a bad example because they were a very good team. But throughout the course of the season, I've seen lots of good periods to play throughout most matches as well. So maybe I should be concerned, but at the moment I'm not.
The only place where I would disagree with you on that is just the idea of keeping Bayliss out from the middle. I just don't. Yes. I can't countenance a situation where he's not the fulcrum of the team and everything exists around him. But aside from that, yeah. Anything final to say on the Charlton? The one thing possibly that before we leave the Charlton game is I don't think I can overstate just how glorious it was to get the winner when we got it. It was really next levels of enjoyment. It was so undeserved. And it was so odd that it was Bakayoko that had got the goal. Yeah. That it was just... I'm so glad that I was there. It was a really, really rare moment of kind of... where for years it's shit, and then you have one day where you go... It sort of balances out like a year of shit.
And it was pissing it down, wasn't it?
Oh, it was horrible.
And it looked it.
I thought the Valley might have been a bit more... it was my first trip there. I thought it might have been a bit better than that. But no, it was kind of one van outside with... I never get... This is so boring, isn't it? But I never understand the false economy of having one person selling beer to 2,000 people. You could have... in the time that we were there, I could have easily fitted 2 pints in, and the people that I was with, Dom included, I'm absolutely sure could have done the same, but they didn't give us the time to be served them. You just think, surely you want the money. I don't get it. But it was, luckily the ground, the stand was covered, but yeah, it was pretty, it was pretty bleak outside, and yeah, but I'm not sure there was many Cov fans noticed the rain on the way out, especially not compared to how much it was on the way in. Right, well, we don't even need to bother with a jingle this week because we've got Dom mainlined into our veins. We've got Wycombe on Saturday. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so of the 4 promoted League 2 teams, they've probably had the hardest time of it adapting to this level. They're also possibly one of the 4, although maybe Accrington are on a similar level of maybe not quite having the resources to massively improve their squad. For League 1, they've relied mainly off the core of the team that won promotion last year, which involves a theoretical front line of Akinfenwa, Craig McHale-Smith and Nathan Tyson, which I think is a combined age of over 100. I definitely, when I was sort of tracking their stats over the summer, for a large period, the average age of their squad was over 30.
Wow, really?
So, yeah, they managed to get some late loan signings to bring that down. But it is a core with a very experienced squad, one lacking an element of mobility and dynamism. And in the opening weeks of the season, they certainly paid for it. A few sort of quite heavy defeats where their usual tactics of getting it into the box at every opportunity, whether that's from set pieces or onto Akinfenwa's head, just wasn't working, and teams were coming apart on the counter-attack. So very slow at the back. So it was looking a little grim. Past couple of weeks, they've definitely picked up. Gareth Ainsworth has talked a lot about staying in games, and they're focusing much more on defending, and they've started to get the rewards for it, putting slightly away from the relegation zone, but not that far away from it.
You mentioned a couple of players there. Akinfenwa, obviously everybody knows. Who else should we look out for?
Yeah, so I think the thing for Wycombe this season is managing Akinfenwa. Ainsworth has even taken him out of the starting lineup and used him as an impact sub. So that's possibly something you might try here. It just looks like he's at an age now where he can't play 90 minutes at League 1 level, and they're sort of going to figure out whether they're using to wear down teams or as an impact sub. The other one to really look out for is their winger Randell Williams, who's on loan from Watford, looks a little bit like Jody Jones. They had him on loan last season towards on the second half of the season. Didn't really make an impact, but this season he's looking very good. Sort of skillful, pacey winger. He's getting crossed into the box, which with Wycombe's physical threat is going to be a useful tactic. They've also got some further pace in the side, although not always starting in Millwall loanee Fred Onyedinma, who's played at Seville for to quite good effect. And they've got players like Scott Cashgett and Paris Cowan, who have been with them a few years, but are not sort of your typical ageing Wycombe player who's sort of been discarded by the clubs and has been picked up by them. Also, want to look out for former loanee Bryn Morris, who he's managed to stick around League One with a few different clubs. Shrewsbury, he's on loan from at Wycombe, and he's done pretty well, sort of adding a bit of dynamism to Wycombe's midfield. Got a couple of assists, and also in goal is Ryan Alsop, who is an okay goalkeeper, I guess, for League One level.
Do you think he is?
He's all right. I don't think he was awful for us. It was just that I think sometimes goalkeepers need a little bit of stability around them. The defenders need to know what their game is about, and he's sort of one of those keepers sort of between League One and League Two-ish. So he's a decent player for Wycombe.
I would like to go back to your contention about Randall Williams looking like Jody Jones. I would say very much like a sort of like a Jody Jones upgrade.
Upgrade?
Yeah, I think there was it. Not in terms of playing style, just aesthetically. Looks like like Jody Jones has taken a picture of Randall Williams into his barbers.
Right, okay.
And then like that. Yeah, I'll post a picture.
Oh, I'll have that, please.
Yeah. I think that's everything. Do you care for a prediction?
I am going to go for a win this time because why not? We should beat Wycombe, and let's hope we use these sort of less difficult fixtures. Although there's no easy games at this level. As a bit of a launch pad now, because I suppose there's a bit of an opportunity now. We're through this really tough run where we're playing basically the side's going to be in automatic promotion, that we can build a little bit of form momentum. And I'm going to be positive and say we're going to do that on Saturday for certain.
That's the death knell for that then. Thank you very much. Let's have a look at some listener questions then. So, Lee Evans asks, who's been the most consistent player of the season so far? He says Willis for me. Neil, you talked about Lee Burge. Dom, anyone you want to mention that we didn't mention, or anyone that you want to back up?
Lee Burge and Dominic Hyam have really impressed me. I was updating the Dominic Hyam profile last week, and it's just sort of casting my mind back to the player he was at the start of last season, where I just didn't see what sort of defender he was. He looked a bit nervy and panicky and slow and not getting the air. So you're like, what does that add up to as a centre back? But no, he looks really good. He looks very comfortable on the ball and bringing the ball out of defence, which I quite like.
I think it's bearing in mind that I think most weeks I end up being really critical about Robbins because of him not having a style of play or blah 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 blah. I think it's a massive pro Robbins plus is the improvement in players. It's beyond question now, isn't it? There's a good bunch of players that he's improved, and I completely agree with you. And we had the added benefit of when we went in the birthday VIP thing last season against Port Vale. It was Haynes and Hyam were the two players that they wheeled out in front of the people while they were eating their lunch, and the Haynes looked young, but Hyam looked they just looked like school kids in their blazers and whatever. And he just didn't, it just was quite stark seeing him close up. And then you'd see him on the pitch and it didn't seem, like you say, he didn't seem to have a defining characteristic, which we football fans are desperate to be able to put players in boxes. but the improvement in him over the last year is just stellar, isn't it? And I don't think he's the best defender in League One or anything like that, but from a player that looked very unsure, now is kind of looks comfortable on the ball and is really consistent and has got a good mix of being sort of, he's not like clod-hoppingly slow, he's all right in the air, he can do a bit of everything, can't he?
Yeah, I think he's really stepped up.
One for Dom, perhaps. This is a question from Dan Gage. Robin's comments about Ogogo being a pressing midfielder a la Kelly was at odds with what I thought he was, a destroyer a la Doyle. Does anyone actually know, and is there a place for him in this team with Doyle appearing to be so integral? And apologies to all of our francophobes for the French in there.
Yeah, my impression of Agogo was he was someone who would sit in front of the defence and sort of do the dirty work and then just give the ball to players who can play it forward. I haven't seen a lot of him to make a definitive judgment, but that seems what he's better suited to. I haven't really seen him sort of push up and close players down in the manner that Kelly did, certainly towards the end of last season. So I'm not really sure. We'll probably have to send in another question to Salopcast for that.
Well, and can we trust them? Is the real question. Final question from Rob Jones, who asks: does Dom keep? This is very first name terms tweet from Rob here. Does Dom come back in, or does Big Tom keep his place? I assume that's Hyam Davis in more formal money. Neil, Dom or Big Tom?
Dom. Shame for Tom, but like Dom. There we go.
With aplomb. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I would just like to formally apologise to Clive Eakin for slagging him something chronic on Twitter. Didn't mean it, Clive. Let me back into your world. He blocked me, by the way, or BBC Cov blocked me on Twitter. That's what that's in reference to.
One of the most pleasant, mild-mannered people I've ever come across. Blocked by Coventry.
Flying out of order, man.
Do you want to explain some context for that? I mean, in any other week where Bakayoko doesn't score 2 late goals to overturn it, that would have been my moment of the week, without doubt. I want you to know that it wasn't overlooked. I'm glad that we've got it
He's
in.
so tongue-in-cheek, though. So basically, we all love him. He's a bit of dipstick, but he gets names wrong all the time. He pronounces names strangely. And it's only since I've been being cheeky and watching iFile follow, and obviously with that now they've got the commentary at the same time, that you realise just how much he gets wrong.
Yeah.
And so watching it, and he's just now I'm starting to judge whether you can actually trust it as a listener. As a listener, before you sort of think, you get a decent idea of who's played well in that. I don't think you do. You are getting a warped Clive's view of the world, which is essentially Jack Hickman playing in every single position except his own. It's just, that's what it was, really. I was just being daft. For all I know, they've blocked me since years and years. I happened to check last night, and I was unable to see their tweets. So that's
it was, you picked up on something that I've heard an awful lot, which is Hiwola. Which is Which is Paul-esque in terms of its pronunciation.
He's committed to it now. He's not changing.
He's made his mind up. It doesn't matter how many times he sees his name either on the sheet in front of him or on the back of his shirt. It's Hiwola.
No, nowhere. It's like,
yeah,
get it.
Love you, Clive. That's that, I think. Okay. Anything else? No. Okay, let's wrap up then. All right. Thank you very much then, Dom.
No, it's good to be on the show as always.
Thanks, Neil.
You.
And thanks for listening. Bye.